Most people do not collapse because life is unbearable. They collapse because they keep moving without structure, without inner order, without knowing who is leading inside them. They call it resilience. They call it strength. But what is really happening is slower and more dangerous. With every day lived without discipline, you hand your authority to whatever emotion arrives first. Anxiety decides your pace. Fear chooses your focus. Urgency dictates your actions. And you mistake movement for direction. Keeping going without discipline feels noble at first. You tell yourself you are surviving, adapting, doing your best. But beneath that effort, something quiet is being lost. Your sense of self begins to thin. Your reactions start replacing your choices. You are still functioning, still producing, still waking up each morning, yet you no longer feel grounded inside your own life. This is the hidden cost no one warns you about. It is not exhaustion. It is disintegration. Marcus Aurelius warned of this exact danger when he wrote in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 2, Paragraph 1, that the soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts. When discipline disappears, thoughts no longer have order. And when thoughts lose order, identity dissolves without noise. This video exists to slow that process down, to make visible what is usually invisible, and to show you what must be restored before you can continue without losing yourself. The invisible slavery, when emotions become commanders. Emotions do not seize control through force, they gain power through vacancy. When reason is absent, something else will always step forward, and emotions are the fastest to volunteer. This is why emotional slavery rarely feels dramatic. It feels normal. It feels like daily life. One anxious thought goes unquestioned because it sounds responsible. One impulse is followed because resisting it feels uncomfortable. One irritation dictates your tone because expressing it feels honest. None of this seems dangerous in isolation. Together, repeated daily, they quietly replace judgment with reaction. Over time, emotions stop arriving as information and begin issuing instructions. Anxiety does not say something might go wrong. It says prepare for everything now. Fear does not say be cautious. It says avoid, withdraw, delay. Irritation does not say a boundary was crossed. It says respond immediately. You begin to confuse intensity with truth. Whatever feels strongest feels most real. Whatever presses hardest feels most urgent. And because there is no disciplined pause, no rational filter, you obey without noticing you are obeying. This is how people lose inner authority without losing functionality. You still work, still decide, still speak, still move. But the source of command has shifted. You are no longer choosing your responses. You are translating emotional demands into action. This is not weakness. It is a structural problem. A city without a governor does not become peaceful. It becomes loud, reactive, and ruled by whoever shouts the most. The same happens inside the mind. Stoic philosophy never taught the suppression of emotion. It taught governance. Epictetus was explicit about this in Discourses of Epictetus, Book 1, Chapter 1, when he explained that people are disturbed not by events themselves, but by the judgments they form about them. Notice the precision. Disturbance is not caused by emotion. It is caused by unexamined judgment. Emotion arrives first, yes, but judgment decides whether it rules or reports. When reason is trained, emotion becomes a signal. When reason is neglected, emotion becomes a commander. This distinction explains why so many intelligent, self-aware people still feel overwhelmed. They analyze their feelings endlessly, but they do not question the authority those feelings have been given. Reflection without discipline becomes rumination. Awareness without structure becomes anxiety with better vocabulary. The most subtle form of slavery is believing you are free because no one else is controlling you, while never noticing that your inner state is. You plan your day around how you feel. You postpone action until motivation arrives. You speak differently depending on your mood. Slowly, life becomes reactive choreography. And because emotions change constantly, stability disappears. You are always adjusting, always responding, always slightly behind yourself. Marcus Aurelius addressed this inner instability when he reminded himself in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 5, Paragraph 16, that the directing mind must remain undisturbed whether the body is relaxed or strained. He was not seeking numbness, he was defending clarity. Without a directing mind, effort becomes chaotic. Endurance becomes self-erasure. You keep going, but you no longer know who is moving. Understanding this dynamic is essential, but it is not enough. Many people recognize that emotions rule them, yet remain trapped because they misunderstand where control actually begins. The next step is correcting that error, because without it, every attempt at discipline collapses back into frustration. The Stoic misunderstanding. Why most people get control wrong. Most people believe they lose control because life is unpredictable. In reality, they lose control because they aim it in the wrong direction. They try to command outcomes, manage other people, predict the future, eliminate uncertainty. When those efforts fail, as they always do, frustration follows. And that frustration is mistaken for proof that control is impossible. Stoicism is then misunderstood as resignation, when in fact it was designed to correct this very error. The Stoics never claimed that control meant influence over events. They defined control as authority over judgment. This distinction is where most people falter. They study the dichotomy of control intellectually, but emotionally they continue to demand certainty from the external world. They say they accept what they cannot control, yet their inner dialogue is still negotiating with reality. Why did this happen? What if it gets worse? How do I stop this? Each question sounds reasonable. Together, they reveal resistance. Epictetus was uncompromising on this point. In Enchiridion of Epictetus, chapter 1, he stated clearly that some things are up to us and some things are not. He did not leave this as philosophy. He treated it as a daily operating system. Opinions, impulses, desires, and aversions belong to us. Body, reputation, possessions, and events do not. The mistake people make is attempting to discipline what lies outside while leaving what lies inside unmanaged. This is why emotional chaos persists even in disciplined external lives. You can be productive, organized, and consistent, yet internally scattered. You can control your schedule while your mind remains reactive. Control, when misdirected, becomes exhaustion. You push harder, plan more, prepare endlessly, yet the sense of stability never arrives. The problem is not insufficient effort, it is misplaced authority. True control begins the moment you stop asking how to change the situation and start asking how you are interpreting it. This is not passive, it is demanding. It requires you to confront your own judgments instead of blaming circumstances. When anxiety arises, the Stoic question is not how do I remove this feeling, but what belief am I treating as fact? When fear appears, the question is not how do I feel safe, but what outcome am I assuming I cannot survive? Marcus Aurelius practiced this relentlessly. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 8, paragraph 47, he reminded himself that external things do not touch the soul unless the soul allows it. This was not denial of pain, it was precision. Events arrive, sensations arise, but meaning is assigned internally, and meaning determines emotional force. Once this is understood, the struggle changes shape. You stop wrestling with life and begin training perception. You no longer try to control what happens next. You control how you frame it, how you respond to it, how much authority you grant it over your inner state. This is where discipline becomes necessary, because perception does not regulate itself. Left unattended, it drifts toward fear, exaggeration, and self-protection. Without this correction, acceptance of fate sounds like surrender. With it, acceptance becomes release. But that release requires confronting resistance itself, not as weakness, but as wasted energy. That is where the next stage begins. Acceptance of fate, not resignation, but release. Most people believe they are resisting events because they care. They tell themselves that tension is responsibility, that worry is preparation, that refusal to accept what happened proves strength. In reality, resistance is rarely noble. It is expensive. It drains energy, distorts perception, and locks the mind in a constant state of negotiation with what already exists. Acceptance of fate, as the Stoics understood it, was never about approving reality. It was about ending this internal war. Resistance multiplies suffering because it demands that reality be different before the mind can be at peace. Every thought becomes conditional. I will be calm when this ends. I will focus when this improves. I will act when I feel ready. This postponement feels logical, but it creates a permanent delay. Life keeps moving. The mind stays behind, arguing with yesterday, rehearsing tomorrow, never fully present in what is actually required now. The Stoics saw this clearly. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 4, paragraph 23, that what happens to you was prepared for you from all eternity. This was not fatalism. It was orientation. He was reminding himself that reality does not need his consent to unfold. Resistance does not change events. It only adds noise to them. When the mind stops fighting what is already here, clarity returns immediately. Acceptance of fate is often misunderstood as passivity because people confuse acceptance with inaction. The Stoic meaning is the opposite. Acceptance removes wasted effort so that action can become precise. When you stop arguing with reality, you can finally respond to it. Emotional exhaustion is not caused by hardship alone. It is caused by carrying two loads at once, the event itself and the demand that it should not have happened. Notice how much energy is consumed by internal resistance. Replaying conversations, imagining alternative outcomes, resenting what cannot be undone, anticipating threats that may never arrive. None of this improves judgment. It only fragments attention. Acceptance closes these loops, not by force, but by recognition. This has happened. This is the situation. Now reason can work. Seneca addressed this discipline of acceptance when he wrote in Letters from a Stoic by Seneca, Letter 1, that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Resistance feeds imagination. Acceptance starves it. When the mind no longer needs to rewrite events, it can finally observe them accurately. And accurate perception is the foundation of rational action. Acceptance does not remove pain. It removes distortion. Pain experienced directly is finite. Pain multiplied by resistance becomes endless. This is why people feel chronically overwhelmed even when nothing catastrophic is occurring. Their energy is consumed not by what they are facing, but by their refusal to face it cleanly. Acceptance restores efficiency. It clears the mental field. Once resistance ends, something unexpected happens. Emotional intensity decreases without suppression. Anxiety loses urgency because it is no longer treated as prophecy. Fear loses dominance because it is no longer confused with certainty. The mind becomes quieter, not because life is easier, but because it is no longer arguing with itself. This quiet is not emptiness, it is readiness, and readiness requires discipline to maintain. Without structure, clarity fades and old habits return. That is why acceptance alone is not enough. It must be supported by reason, trained to lead consistently. This is where discipline stops being punishment and becomes self-respect. Discipline as self-respect, the role. Reason plays. Discipline is often framed as restriction, as denial, as something imposed against desire. This misunderstanding turns discipline into a source of resentment rather than stability. In Stoic thought, discipline was never about forcing yourself to endure more. It was about preventing the inner collapse that occurs when reason abandons its role. Discipline is not violence against the self, it is loyalty to it. When emotions surge, something must decide. Either impulse acts immediately or reason intervenes. There is no neutral state. Without discipline, reason arrives too late. You speak before you think. You react before you assess. You commit to actions that do not reflect your values, only your mood. Over time, this erodes self-trust. You stop believing your own intentions because experience has taught you that emotion will override them. Marcus Aurelius treated discipline as protection of the directing mind. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 6, paragraph 30, he reminded himself to act with firmness but without strain, and to preserve the ruling faculty uncorrupted. This was not about toughness, it was about continuity. Discipline ensures that the same principles guide you in calm and in pressure. Without it, identity fractures depending on circumstance. Small acts of discipline stabilize the self more than dramatic effort. Pausing before responding is discipline. Choosing silence over emotional discharge is discipline. Acting according to judgment rather than urgency is discipline. These moments are rarely visible to others, but they determine whether you remain internally aligned. Discipline is not measured by intensity. It is measured by consistency. Without discipline, emotional intelligence collapses into emotional obedience. You become fluent in describing your feelings, yet powerless to regulate them. Stoicism never praised awareness without control. It demanded that understanding be followed by governance. Knowing what you feel is not enough. You must decide what authority it has. This is where self-respect emerges. When you act in accordance with reason, despite emotional pressure, you reinforce an internal standard. You prove to yourself that you are not at the mercy of passing states. Each disciplined response strengthens trust between intention and action. This trust is the foundation of inner stability. Without it, motivation becomes fragile and confidence becomes performative. Seneca warned of this erosion when he wrote in Letters from a Stoic by Seneca, Letter 20, that no man is free who is a slave to his body. He was speaking not of physical desire alone, but of unexamined impulse. Freedom, in Stoic terms, was the ability to choose one's response regardless of internal turbulence. Discipline does not eliminate emotion. It prevents emotion from hijacking direction. It allows you to feel fully without being dragged. It creates a buffer where reason can operate. And in that space, life becomes navigable again. But discipline without application remains theory. To preserve this structure in daily life, reason must be practiced deliberately, not occasionally. This leads to the practical response loop that turns Stoic insight into lived stability. Practical application, the Stoic response loop. Understanding Stoic principles does not stabilize the mind. Practicing them does. Without application, insight fades under pressure and old patterns return. This is why many people feel momentary clarity after reflection, only to lose it when emotion resurges. The Stoics anticipated this. They did not design philosophy to inspire, but to be rehearsed under stress. Stability is built through repetition, not realization. The Stoic response loop begins the moment an emotional surge appears, not after it overwhelms you, not once damage is done, but at its first signal. Anxiety tightens the chest, irritation sharpens the tongue, fear accelerates thought. These sensations are not commands, they are alerts. The disciplined response starts with noticing without compliance. You observe the sensation without acting on it. This pause is not hesitation, it is reclaiming authority. Once noticed, the next task is naming. What precisely is within your control in this moment, and what is not? Not abstractly, but specifically. You cannot control outcomes, timing, or other people's reactions. You can control your judgment, your intention, and your next deliberate action. This naming collapses emotional exaggeration. It brings the situation back to its actual size. Fear thrives in vagueness. Clarity deprives it of oxygen. Epictetus emphasized this practice repeatedly because it is where philosophy becomes functional. In Discourses of Epictetus, Book 2, Chapter 16, he explained that every situation presents an opportunity to apply the principles we claim to value. Without this application, values remain decorative. The response loop transforms theory into habit. The final step is choice. Not the perfect action, the rational one available now. Often this action is smaller than the emotion demands, speaking less, waiting longer, doing one thing well instead of many things urgently. Reason does not compete with emotion by force. It outlasts it through precision. Each correct choice reinforces internal leadership. This loop does not remove emotion. It contains it. Anxiety may still arise, but it no longer dictates direction. Frustration may still appear, but it no longer controls tone. Over time, emotions learn their place. They inform rather than rule. The mind becomes quieter, Not because life is simple, but because responses are no longer chaotic. What makes this loop effective is not intensity, but consistency. Each time you notice, name, and choose, you strengthen the pathway of reason. Each time you skip it, emotion regains ground. There is no neutrality. Governance is either practiced or abandoned. With enough repetition, something shifts. You stop feeling as though life is happening to you. You begin to experience yourself as participating deliberately in it. This is not confidence, it is orientation. And orientation is what allows you to keep going without fragmentation. The final step is integration. Taking everything discussed and anchoring it into a single stable posture toward life itself. Keep going without losing yourself. Keeping going is not the problem. Continuing without inner order is. Most people do not lose themselves in moments of collapse. They lose themselves slowly, through unexamined reactions, habitual resistance, and the absence of a directing principle. Life keeps moving, demands keep coming, and without structure, the self thins until it becomes little more than a collection of responses. Stoic discipline was designed to prevent this erosion, not by making life easier, but by making the mind coherent. When reason governs judgment, emotions regain their proper role. They inform, but they do not command. When acceptance of fate replaces resistance, energy returns. When control is placed where it belongs, perception stabilizes. These are not separate practices, they are aspects of a single posture toward existence. Marcus Aurelius understood this posture as alignment with nature. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 3, Paragraph 4, he reminded himself that what harms the hive harms the bee. He was speaking of harmony between inner reason and the larger order of life. When the directing mind resists reality, it fractures itself. When it aligns, it endures without strain. By this point, nothing external has changed. Circumstances remain uncertain. Outcomes remain beyond guarantee. Difficulty remains possible. Yet something fundamental is different. You are no longer negotiating your stability with events. You are carrying it with you. This is the quiet power Stoicism offers. Not control over life, but continuity within it. You no longer ask how to feel better before acting. You act according to reason and allow feelings to follow. You no longer wait for clarity to appear. You create it through disciplined response. Each choice reinforces the same identity, regardless of pressure. This is how the self is preserved, not through intensity but through coherence. Seneca captured this when he wrote in Letters from a Stoic by Seneca, Letter 41, that the good man is content with what he has, not because he lacks ambition, but because he lacks inner conflict. This absence of conflict is not passivity. It is alignment. It is the result of reason consistently choosing what accords with virtue rather than emotion. Finally, the meaning of discipline becomes clear. Discipline is not what you force yourself to do when life is hard. It is what allows you to remain yourself while life unfolds as it will. You do not need to control life to endure it. You need to control who decides within you.